Thank you to Georgia Boot for sponsoring this video. Check out their flash sale happening May 27th through the 29th. Pull-on work boots just $79. Save $100 or more. Plus, earn double reward points. Use code GIANT to save. Click the link in the description to grab yourself a new pair of boots from Georgia Boot. We often look to the skies with a sense of wonder, marveling at the power and beauty of nature. But sometimes that power can turn terrifying, unleashing forces that leave an indelible mark on history. Among the most awe-inspiring and destructive weather phenomena are tornadoes, nature's most violent storms. While they can occur across the globe, certain regions are more susceptible, and throughout history, some tornadoes have etched themselves into our collective memory due to their sheer devastation and tragic loss of life. Join me as we count down the top 10 worst tornadoes ever recorded. Our journey into the past begins in the summer of 1953, in the state of Michigan. While not traditionally considered part of Tornado Alley, this region experienced a severe weather outbreak, the consequences of which would be felt for decades to come. On Monday, June 8, 1953, as evening approached around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, an exceptionally powerful tornado touched down in Genesee County, near the town of Flint, and carved a devastating path through the northern suburb of Beecher. Rated an F5 on the Fujita scale, the highest possible intensity, this storm stands as the deadliest tornado in Michigan's history and the last F5 to directly impact southeast Lower Michigan. The sheer force of an F5 tornado is almost unimaginable, capable of leveling even well-built homes and hurling large objects through the air like missiles. This intensity underscores the extreme power unleashed that day, a stark reminder that severe weather can strike with little warning in various regions, not just those historically known for tornado activity. The tornado's destructive journey began in M.T. Morris Township, east of Flushing and northwest of Flint, and tracked eastward through the residential neighborhoods of Beecher before continuing towards Genesee and Lapeer counties. Its path of destruction stretched for approximately 18.6 to 27 miles, and at its widest point, the storm measured around 833 yards across. The human cost of this disaster was immense. In its wake, the Flint-Beecher tornado left 116 people dead and 844 others injured. The speed with which the tornado struck, coupled with the limited warning systems of the time, left residents with little opportunity to seek adequate shelter. Some survivors recall the terrifying roar of the approaching storm, like a freight train barreling down on them, and the ominous sight of the dark, swirling funnel before they could even react. Tragically, for many families, the storm brought unimaginable loss, with multiple members often perishing in the blink of an eye. The concentration of such a high number of fatalities in a relatively small area like Beecher underscores the devastating impact this single event had on the close-knit community, tearing apart families and shattering lives with brutal efficiency. The tornado's fury left a trail of destruction, with hundreds of homes completely destroyed or suffering major damage. Even Beecher High School, a cornerstone of the community, was heavily damaged. In the face of such devastation, the resilience of the human spirit shone through as the community rallied together to begin the long and arduous process of rebuilding. Moving back in time to the close of the 19th century, we find ourselves in Wisconsin, a state also not typically associated with the most intense tornado activity. Yet, in the summer of 1899, tragedy struck with devastating force.
I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso, and on this day in weather history, June 12, 1899, a powerful F5 tornado virtually destroyed the village of New Richmond, Wisconsin. The town was home to roughly 2,500 people. However, there was a circus that day, adding hundreds of travelers and tourists. The show concluded at 4:30 p.m., just as heavy rain and hail began to fall. The skies cleared 30 minutes later, and people assumed the storm was over. The tornado began as a waterspout on Lake St. Croix around 5:30 p.m. It moved into open farmland, destroying several structures as it moved northeast. The tornado struck New Richmond at 6 p.m. and was illuminated by lightning, but was only visible minutes before it reached the town. Many were in the streets, and there was little or no warning to take cover. The twister erased parts of the town, tossing debris and people everywhere. Those who didn't take shelter most likely perished, but even those who hid underground were crushed to death by flying debris from structures being ripped from their foundations. The tornado killed 117, injured 125, and damages totaled over $300,000 at the time. It ranks as one of the deadliest in U.S. history. I'm Mark Mancuso.
On Monday, June 12, 1899, at approximately 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, an estimated F5 tornado ripped through the town of New Richmond. The presence of the Golmar Brothers Circus in town that day had swelled the population, with many visitors coming to enjoy the festivities. This unfortunate timing significantly increased the number of people in harm's way, highlighting how specific events can tragically amplify the impact of natural disasters. The tornado's life began as a waterspout over Lake St. Croix, about 5 miles south of Hudson, before it moved northeast, directly impacting New Richmond. Its path stretched for around 45 miles, and the width of the destruction zone reached approximately 400 to 500 yards. The sheer power of the storm resulted in a staggering 117 fatalities and 150 injuries, similar to the Flint Beecher tornado. The residents of New Richmond had little warning before the storm struck. The timing, just after the circus had ended and people were making their way home, meant many were caught in the open. Accounts from survivors paint a picture of families caught completely unaware, some finding shelter in basements only to have their homes ripped away above them. Adding to the horror, fires erupted in the aftermath of the tornado, fueled by the destruction of the town's electrical plant and water facilities. This secondary disaster made rescue efforts even more challenging and contributed to the difficulty in identifying victims. The tornado left over half of New Richmond in ruins, with the entire business district completely destroyed. The damage was so severe that the town essentially had to be rebuilt from the ground up. Our list continues with a devastating tornado outbreak that struck Louisiana and Mississippi in the spring of 1908, demonstrating how severe weather events can impact multiple states simultaneously. On Friday, April 24, 1908, a series of powerful tornadoes tore through the region. Among the most destructive were those that ravaged Amite and Pine in Louisiana and Purvis and Rickton in Mississippi. The primary tornadoes in this outbreak reached an estimated intensity of F4 on the Fujita scale. This event underscores the fact that severe weather often occurs in clusters, with multiple tornadoes forming from the same storm system, significantly increasing the overall risk and placing a greater burden on emergency response efforts. The tornado's paths began in Louisiana, impacting the communities of Amite and Pine, before moving eastward into Mississippi and striking Purvis and Rickton. The width of the destruction was immense, reaching up to 2 miles in Amite. Officially, this outbreak resulted in 143 deaths. However, it is widely believed that this figure is an undercount, as fatalities among the African American population were often not properly recorded during this era. This tragic oversight highlights the historical inequalities in data collection and reminds us that the true impact of such disasters may be far greater than official records suggest. In addition to the loss of life, approximately 770 people sustained injuries. The devastation was particularly severe in Amite, Louisiana, where 29 people perished, and in Purvis, Mississippi, where 55 lives were lost and the town was almost completely leveled. In Purvis, the tornado tore through a rail yard, tossing boxcars, where some workers had sought shelter, up to 150 feet. The damage left behind was extensive. Amite suffered significant destruction, but Purvis bore the brunt of the storm, with much of the town, including the railroad depot, reduced to rubble.
Reports that most of the rain has passed through there, but they are seeing what people are considering a wall cloud, 20 to 30 miles per hour. Obviously, some clouds have some people concerned, basically between Galena and Joplin.
It was on a Sunday, and so I remember it was just a very hot and humid day that day, and you can kind of see a storm rolling in from the west.
I was actually attending my son's graduation. It was the high school graduation here in town. The skies were starting to become a little overcast. You could see some thunderstorms building off to the west of the city.
It's a storm you see coming across the Kansas border now, just about to make it to the Joplin area. We also have some showers and storms across northern Arkansas.
I was in the newsroom at 5 o'clock. We knew the tornado watches were out there. We knew the tornado warnings were out there. But it wasn't until about 05:05 or when we started listening to the AM station in Joplin.
KCRG News Time is 5:28. We're live storm team coverage here.
Jumping forward over a century, we arrive at a more recent tragedy that shook the state of Missouri in the spring of 2011. Despite significant advancements in weather forecasting and warning systems, nature's fury can still unleash unimaginable destruction. On Sunday, May 22, 2011, in the late afternoon, around 5:41 p.m. local time, an EF5 multiple vortex tornado struck the city of Joplin. This devastating storm stands as the deadliest tornado to occur in the United States in the 21st century. The fact that such a powerful tornado could still cause so much loss of life in an era of advanced technology underscores the inherent unpredictability and danger of these events, especially when they strike densely populated areas. While tornado warnings were issued prior to the event, the rapid intensification and specific path of the storm overwhelmed the community's ability to fully respond, highlighting the limitations even with modern technology. The tornado carved a path of destruction through Joplin, tracking eastward for 13 miles and reaching a maximum width of over 1 mile. The slow movement of the storm exacerbated the damage, allowing its intense winds to inflict maximum destruction on the structures in its path. The Joplin tornado resulted in the direct deaths of 158 people, with an additional 3 indirect fatalities, and left over 1,150 individuals injured. The scale of destruction was immense, with over 8,000 homes and buildings damaged or completely destroyed. Essential community infrastructure, including the local hospital and several schools, suffered catastrophic damage.
272, 223. Can't reach my wife. Can I go? So stand by on that until we can figure out what we got here.
Battalion 1 and Chief Randolph has advised that we would be waiting before we send anyone out or any of their vehicles out for search and rescue.
I'm in service. I have control of the street. Is our paging system still working?
We are unsure.
321, 223. I'm on range line now. You may head that line. Yeah, just kind of go slow and don't keep an eye out because we're not sure where it's going or where it's headed. Tornado on overflying J. Tornado overflying J. I'm in a tornado! I'm in a tornado! I'm in service.
The damage across the city was widespread, impacting homes, businesses, and infrastructure along a 6-mile stretch. The financial cost of the recovery efforts was also significant, reaching billions of dollars. Returning to the mid-20th century, we focus on a tornado that holds the grim distinction of being the deadliest ever to strike within the borders of Oklahoma. The year was 1947, and the power of nature would be tragically displayed in the city of Woodward. On Wednesday, April 9, 1947, a violent tornado, later rated an F5 on the Fujita scale, tore through the region, striking the city of Woodward without warning at 8:42 p.m. Central Standard Time. This storm remains the most lethal in Oklahoma's history. The fact that this tornado struck at night significantly reduced visibility and the ability for residents to take immediate shelter, likely contributing to the high number of fatalities. The tornado's path began near Canadian Texas and stretched northeastward for approximately 100 miles through Oklahoma, impacting the towns of Glacier and Higgins in Texas before unleashing its full fury on Woodward. At its widest point in Woodward, the storm reached an astonishing 1.8 miles across. The Glacier-Higgins-Woodward tornado outbreak resulted in a total of 181 fatalities. Of these, 107 occurred in Woodward, 51 in Higgins, 17 in Glacier, and 6 in other rural parts of Oklahoma.
In America, it seems that grim nature must have the last word. First it was floods, now it's a tornado that has swept 6 states and left a trail of destruction. In North Carolina, it struck with smashing power, killing nearly a score of people, leveling houses to the ground and smashing them to firewood. In Georgia, it's the same story, and here the death roll is 36. The business section of Gainesville, Georgia lies in ruins. A bell blown from its tower, a statue hurled 50 feet. And then fire adds to the terror of the tornado. and the flames rage unchecked because the fire engines are buried in the ruins. It isn't only war that takes its toll.
As we continue our countdown, we move to the year 1936, a year marked by a particularly devastating tornado outbreak across the southern United States. 2 tornadoes from this outbreak rank among the deadliest in history, occurring on consecutive days. On Monday, April 6, 1936, the city of Gainesville, Georgia, was struck by a powerful tornado. This F4 intensity storm, with winds reaching up to 260 miles per hour, remains one of the deadliest disasters ever recorded in the state of Georgia. The tornado, actually a convergence of 2 separate funnel clouds, tore through the downtown area around 8:30 a.m., catching the unsuspecting city off guard. The official death toll in Gainesville reached 203, though some accounts suggest it may have been higher. Over 900 people were injured, and more than 750 homes were either damaged or completely destroyed. Just one day prior to the Gainesville tragedy, the same storm system unleashed another incredibly deadly tornado in the state of Mississippi. This event further underscores the destructive potential of widespread tornado outbreaks. On Sunday, April 5, 1936, the city of Tupelo, Mississippi, was struck by an F5 tornado, the most powerful rating on the Fujita scale. With winds estimated between 261 and 318 miles per hour, this storm ranks as the 4th deadliest in U.S. history. The tornado hit around 9 p.m., adding to the difficulty for residents to see and react to the approaching danger. The tornado carved a 15-mile path through Tupelo, leveling 48 city blocks and destroying over 1,000 homes, as well as numerous businesses, schools, and churches. The storm came in from the southwest, with winds so fierce they embedded pine needles into the trunks of trees. The official death toll from the Tupelo tornado was 216, though some sources believe the actual number was closer to 250 due to undercounting, particularly in African American neighborhoods. In addition to the fatalities, at least 700 people were injured. Among the notable survivors of this devastating storm was a young Elvis Presley, who was just over a year old at the time and lived just north of Tupelo. The tornado's selective destruction was evident, with some well-built homes completely swept away while others nearby remained relatively intact. Moving further back in time to the late 19th century, we focus on a tornado that brought devastation to a major American city and its neighbor across the Mississippi River. The year was 1896, and the city was St. Louis. On Wednesday, May 27, 1896, at approximately 5 p.m., a powerful F4 tornado, often referred to as the Great Cyclone, struck St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois. This historic storm remains the 3rd deadliest tornado in United States history and was, at the time, one of the costliest. The late afternoon timing meant that many people were likely out and about, increasing their exposure to the storm's fury. The tornado touched down on the southwest edge of St. Louis and cut a 10-mile path of destruction, reaching a width of half a mile in some areas. Its erratic movement spared the tall buildings of downtown St. Louis, but devastated residential neighborhoods like Lafayette Square and Compton Heights, as well as the poorer Mill Creek Valley. The Great Cyclone resulted in at least 255 fatalities and over 1,000 injuries. However, it is believed that the actual death toll may have been higher, as deaths of people on boats in the Mississippi River and in shanty towns along the riverbanks were likely not fully counted. The storm's intensity was such that it even damaged significant infrastructure, including the Eads Bridge, a structure then considered tornado-proof. The tornado then crossed the Mississippi River into East St. Louis, where it caused further widespread damage and loss of life. The disaster not only highlighted the immense power of nature, but also sparked a wave of human compassion, as citizens came together to aid those affected. The tornado caused widespread destruction across St. Louis and East St. Louis, impacting both affluent and impoverished neighborhoods. It sank several boats on the Mississippi River and damaged the Eads Bridge. Our list now brings us to the 2nd deadliest tornado in United States history, a catastrophic event that struck the state of Mississippi in the early 19th century. This tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of communities before the advent of modern forecasting and warning systems. On Thursday, May 6, 1840, the Great Natchez tornado tore through the southwestern part of Mississippi. This powerful storm, estimated to have been an F4 or possibly even an F5, is unique in that it is the only major tornado in U.S. history that killed more people than it injured. The lack of any effective communication or warning systems in 1840 meant that the residents of Natchez had no way of knowing what was coming. The tornado formed about 20 miles southwest of Natchez and followed the Mississippi River directly, stripping forests from both banks. Its path of destruction was approximately 35 miles long and a staggering 1,000 yards wide. The Great Natchez tornado resulted in at least 317 fatalities and 109 injuries. Finally, we arrive at the most devastating single tornado in the recorded history of the United States, a storm that left an unimaginable trail of destruction across 3 states and claimed an unprecedented number of lives. On March 18, 1925, the tri-state tornado carved a path of destruction for an astounding 219 miles across southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, and southwestern Indiana. This F5 intensity storm remains the deadliest single tornado in U.S. history and the second deadliest registered worldwide. Touching down around 1 p.m. near Ellington, Missouri, it moved northeastward, maintaining an average speed of 62 miles per hour and reaching a peak speed of 73 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest tornadoes ever recorded. In 1925, tornado forecasting was not practiced to avoid public panic, and even the word tornado was often omitted from weather reports. This lack of warning contributed significantly to the catastrophic loss of life. The tornado's path was incredibly wide, averaging around 3/4 of a mile and reaching over a mile in some areas. It devastated numerous towns along its path, including Gorham, DeSoto, and Murfreesboro in Illinois, and Griffin, Owensville, and Princeton in Indiana. The tri-state tornado claimed the lives of an astounding 695 people and injured over 2,000 others. Illinois suffered the highest number of fatalities, with over 600 deaths. The storm completely leveled farms and towns in its path, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. Eyewitness accounts describe a dark, ominous cloud that seemed to roll along the ground, taking people completely by surprise. The sheer scale and intensity of the tri-state tornado remain unparalleled in U.S. history. The tornado completely destroyed numerous towns and caused widespread damage across 3 states. The lack of warning left communities utterly vulnerable to its unprecedented power. The 10 tornadoes we've explored represent some of the most tragic weather events in history, demonstrating the immense power of nature and the devastating impact these storms can have on human lives. The total loss of life from these 10 events alone numbers in the thousands, a sobering reminder of the forces at play in our atmosphere. Our understanding of tornadoes has evolved significantly since the early 19th century, moving from a time of limited knowledge and virtually no forecasting capabilities to the modern era, where sophisticated warning systems and advanced meteorological tools help to save countless lives. The lessons learned from these past tragedies have been instrumental in shaping improved building codes, enhanced safety measures, and more effective emergency response protocols. The history of these deadly tornadoes underscores the critical importance of continued advancements in forecasting technology, robust warning systems, and proactive community preparedness efforts to minimize future losses. As we reflect on these devastating events, let us remember the victims and their families, and let us continue to strive for a greater understanding of these powerful storms, always maintaining a healthy respect for the raw power and unpredictability of nature. Thank you for joining me in this terrifying Top 10 Tornado Countdown. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, stay safe.